In the previous video we have seen how to connect a Raspberry Pi using Putty. As promised, let's see how we can customize Putty further so that we can improve our user experience. So this is where we left off, with the Raspberry Pi connected to the IP address we had recorded, and we finally remoted it into the Raspberry Pi on a terminal session. Let's see how we can customize this session to make it a bit more friendly, or at least more to our liking. And one of the things that we can look into immediately is that some of the settings can be changed at runtime by simply right-clicking on the bar up there and click on Change Settings. And this is what's shown up. It's a series of options that can be changed for this specific session running right now. As you may see, if you click on the toolbar once again and select New Session, the amount of settings that can be changed for a runtime session and for a session that is stored is quite different. So not all the things that we're going to change now can be done whilst the session is running, and will probably have to be just changed before we load up the session in the first place. Let's look at some of the cosmetic changes that I think are actually rather pleasant to change. One of the things I really hate is the bell that goes off when you make a mistake or when there is any autocompletion happening. So if we were to type CD, that's the annoying beep going, which I very much dislike, and I prefer to remove it. So the way we do it is to just go on Change Settings, hit the bell, and put None, Apply. And this will stop the bell from going off for the autocompletions or for the errors. Another thing that I like to change is the colors of the session. Some of the colors used to highlight different items in the sessions on some screens don't really render the way I would like them to be. For example, the directories are a very dark blue on a black background, and on some screens, as I said, it is really not pleasant. You can't see that too well. So one of the things I do is to change the settings here in colors as to use the system colors. That will bring you to a rather pleasant white background where the blue folders are fairly evident and easy to spot and to read. And this is frankly as far as I would go with the cosmetics, or at least this is as far as I go with changing how the session really feels. Another important thing, or at least an interesting aspect of Putty, is that it can record your session by going into session logging, and you can then define how much of the session you want to log onto a file for later use or for reference, or maybe because you just want to prepare a training like this one. You can then select to log the printable output onto a file of your choice. I've chosen to create a file called Putty Test on the document, and as you apply, all the output that it's seen on the screen is also going to be recorded onto the file. So if we retrieve it under Documents, there it is. If you're not saving your output onto a log file, and you may be just relying on the buffer of the session to store whatever happens on the screen, you may actually find out that the buffer is limited, and some of the things that have been printed some time ago may no longer be accessible through the scroll bar over here. So if I was to launch a command like this, and then again and again and again, the scroll bar increases to show me that it's storing output in the buffer of the session. But after a while, as I said, this is going to start rewriting itself. So one of the things that could be done is to change how much that buffer is, and you can do so by going into change settings, Windows, and you can change the line to scroll back to, which I now have put to 4000 when the default is 2000. This is generally more than enough, and if you have to save anything much longer than that, you may want to rely on saving your session onto a file with the session login as shown before. One other thing that not maybe everybody knows about the use of Putty is that the cut and paste in Putty is done by simply selecting some text. So if I was to type this ls command and I wanted to copy this command, I will then click and select the text, and then as I do right click, the text will be printed back into the session. Or for what matters, it could be a question of copy pasting it into Notepad as it goes directly into the clipboard when selecting it. So this is some very basic usage of the Putty client. Let's see how we can store all the changes that we made so far so that they are then made permanent. As we open up our Putty client, we then load up the Raspberry Pi session, and instead of going to open, we're going to go onto the various options here to change what we just changed before and make it permanent onto the session. So we can go onto Bell and make it none. We can go into colors and make it use the system colors. We can go into window and change the buffer to say 4000 as before, and then go back to session and save. As we load up the session, everything is as we left it off. And sure thing, as we open the session, the background is a giveaway to tell us that effectively all the settings have been saved and none of the annoying things is going on. So just as a small recap, this is what we've seen today. We have seen how to change a default session that we saved previously so that the bell doesn't go off, so that the colors are the system colors and may be able to highlight better all the elements within the session. Then the buffer can be increased so that we can scroll back to previous lines that have been printed out on the session and be able maybe to copy paste or refer to them for a longer period of time. If the session needs to be saved onto a file, then we can always go on to session logging, even during runtime, select the printable output, choose a file name of our liking, and then apply. This is all good and well, but what if we want to run any command on the shell that will require to have graphical vest? If we were to log on to the Raspberry Pi and maybe you need to run a command like Epiphany that requires the graphical support, that will not run. In the next session we will see exactly what we need to do in order for the graphical commands to be able to run through Putty on a remote session. So these were the few tips I had to give you in order to make running a session to your Raspberry Pi a bit more pleasant and a bit more user-friendly. It brings this video to a close, so as usual that's all folks, and see you next time.